Welcome to the TFL Podcast, your number one source for content about the Football League Madden franchise. Here's your host, Vaughn. All right, everyone, welcome to the show. This is Vaughn. I appreciate you joining me for this Week 8 podcast. We're going to do things a little bit different tonight. There's not a ton of big matchups this week in terms of records or anything like that. We've got a couple of divisional matchups, but we'll give you a little recap of what happened last week, focusing on our two spotlight games, Green Bay and the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Chargers and Giants. Then we'll go through some top performers, and then I'll give you my Week 8 picks against the spread provided by Daddy Leagues, which is an awesome feature, but I'll give my Week 8 picks against the spread. So first, let's start with our recap. We highlighted two games last week, the 5-0 Packers versus the 5-1 Bengals, and then the 3-2 Chargers against the 5-1 Giants. So let's start in Cincinnati with the Bengals. Green Bay stays undefeated with a 23-22 victory over Cincinnati. This is a really hard-fought game, back and forth the whole way. I don't think any team led by more than a touchdown throughout the entire game. The Bengals dominated this game statistically. They had more yards, 383 to 298, had more first downs. Joe Burrow played a fantastic game, throwing for 317 yards, 2 scores, no interceptions. Aaron Rodgers was efficient, not quite as good, 214 yards and a score. He connected with Marcus Valdez-Scantling for 78 yards, and then his number one target, Devontae Adams, had 63 yards and a touchdown on 4 catches. But the difference in this game came at the end. Cincinnati had a chance to win. They drove with under a minute left, had the ball on Green Bay's side of the field, I believe around the 30-yard line, and Joe Burrow just made an unbelievable mistake. He climbs the pocket, looks like he was getting ready to scramble, and at the last minute, he threw to an open tight end for a big gain, but he was in front of the line of scrimmage, which was a 5-yard penalty, loss of down, knocked Cincinnati out of field goal range, gave them a 4th and 15. They had to go for it. It was turned out to be about a 59-yard field goal into the wind, which they didn't feel confident in kicking. So go for it on 4th and 15, throw deep into the end zone, and had a shot. I believe he went to Tyler Boyd in one-on-one coverage, but the ball was batted away, and Green Bay held on to move to 6-0. Cincinnati falls to 5-2, still leading their division, but Riley and Green Bay maintains their undefeated streak, the last undefeated team in the league. And we'll get to their matchup next week in our Week 8 picks, but pretty good chance for them to move to 7-0. So Green Bay gets to 6-0. They've already had their bye week, so they're going strong the rest of the season. We'll see how long they can maintain that undefeated streak. Our second highlight game was the Los Angeles Chargers and the New York Giants. The Giants were traveling to Los Angeles for this game. The Chargers dominated the Giants, won 27-17 to move to 4-2. The Giants fall to 5-2, but this score was not indicative of how badly the Chargers beat the Giants. Daniel Jones, we talked about him as an early MVP candidate. He was flustered into 3 interceptions, was sacked 3 times. Saquon Barkley couldn't do much on the ground, only 34 yards, and part of that was because they fell behind pretty early, so they had to abandon the run a little bit, but the Chargers defense just balled out. Again, they sacked Daniel Jones 3 times. They only had, I think, 9 sacks going into the game, or 8 going into the game, and were able to force some pressure on him. Held the Giants, one of the most explosive offenses in the league, to 236 yards, only 11 first downs. Chargers had 342 on the day, 21 first downs, and of course a +2 turnover differential. They only threw 1 interception while picking Jones off 3 times. The only reason this game was close because the Chargers had 5 red zone appearances, only got 2 touchdowns out of it, kicked 2 field goals, and I believe they had an interception on the other one. Austin Eckler, we talked about his season last week, averaging, believe over 8 yards a carry, had 98 yards on the game, no touchdowns, but played well. Justin Herbert completing 80% of his passes, threw 2 scores and the 1 interception. So again, Chargers with a dominant victory, a statement victory over one of the top teams in the NFC in the Giants, 27-17. So those were the two highlight games, our two spotlight games for the week. Let's talk a little bit about some top performers. Our players of the week in the NFC, you had Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons in a victory over the Seattle Seahawks. Ryan completed 19 of 24 passes for 292 yards and 4 touchdowns. This coming after a week where he threw 6 interceptions, so a really good bounce back week for Ryan. On the defensive side, Kyle Fuller, cornerback for Washington football team, had 8 tackles, 2 picks, and a touchdown in a big win over Kansas City. Washington is right in the hunt for the division. They're at 3-3 now. So that was a really huge game for Kyle Fuller. We're going to talk about his brother later as well, who had a big week. In the AFC, Offensive Player of the Week, rookie quarterback Isaac Peterson. We touched on Peterson, the #1 overall draft pick out of by Jacksonville. We talked about him last week. Had a really good game against the CPU Colts. Drew is having some internet difficulties, so hopefully he can get that figured out and get back on track. But Peterson was 13 of 18 for 246 yards and 4 touchdowns, and I believe they won 38-7, something like that. So a big win for Jacksonville to try to keep pace in the AFC playoff picture. On the defensive side, Pittsburgh safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, 6 tackles and a ridiculous 4 interceptions of Baker Mayfield. But despite that, they lost to Cleveland. The 4 interceptions were one short of the league record set by Tre'Davious White last season, season 1, who had 5 picks in a game. I believe that was against Kansas City. But Fitzpatrick with 4 interceptions, keeping his team in it, but wasn't quite enough to overcome the Browns as the Steelers fall to 2-5 on the season. A surprising outcome. Some other top performers, Drew Lock threw for 271 yards and 3 scores in a victory. On the ground, Derrick Henry was the only 100-yard rusher of the week, 113 yards and 2 scores in a big victory for Tennessee over the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of big games in the past game, so I'm just going to highlight a few receivers. Detroit rookie Cade Harper, I believe making only his 3rd or 4th start of the season, had 15 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown, plays a lot out of the slot, worked those underneath routes extremely well. So 15 catches for the rookie. Cortland Sutton, in Denver, 6 catches for 126 yards and 2 scores, matching up with Locke's good game. Curtis Samuel in Miami had 10 catches for 183 yards and a score in a big win for the Dolphins over the New England Patriots. Henry Ruggs, Roll Tide for Las Vegas, had 5 catches and 152 yards in a score. And then wrapping up our spotlight receivers, Julio Jones, once again, Roll Tide, wide receiver U, rounding out a great day on the for receivers across the league. 10 catches for 104 yards and a couple of touchdowns. It wasn't all great for pass games this week, or last week, excuse me. On defense, I mentioned, Kendall Fuller for Washington. I believe I said Kyle Fuller earlier. Kendall Fuller had 2 interceptions and a touchdown. His brother Kyle Fuller in Chicago also had 2 picks. Joining him in Chicago, Khalil Mack, the elite pass rusher, had 3 sacks on the day. A couple other defenders with multiple interceptions. Kansas City cornerback Ricardo Allen had 2 picks. Tennessee corner Pierre Desir had 2 picks. San Francisco's linebacker Fred Warner, who JLM users quite well, I believe had 2 interceptions. Atlanta's linebacker, I'm not going to try to say his first name because I can't think of it, but Olukon had 2 interceptions, and then Denver corner Isaac Yiadom had 2 interceptions as well. So a lot of multiple interception games this week. A couple of pick sixes. Clinton Dix, again, Roll Tide. Alabama's dominating this league. For the Chargers, had a pick 6. And then Logan Ryan for, I believe, Atlanta also had a pick 6 on the day. So lots of action, a lot of top performers on the day or on the week for week 7. So let's wrap this up. Let's get to the week 8 picks. I don't have a highlight game this week, and I'm not going to touch on too much. I'm just kind of roll down. Daddy Leagues, as I mentioned, gives us an awesome line and spread for these games. So I'm going to go through. I have an upset special this week, but I'll go through each of these games. So first up, we've got Cleveland at Tennessee. Tennessee is a 6-point favorite At 4-2 over the 2-4 Cleveland Browns. As I mentioned last week, Rob, I believe, is back and played his first user game in a while this week. He's back from his wedding, so I'm actually going to take Cleveland in the 6 points. I don't know that they beat the Titans outright, but I think they cover that spread, and I think they have a good chance of winning that game. So give me Cleveland +6. Tampa Bay at Atlanta, both teams 3-3 in the division. Big divisional game. They're trying to keep pace with the 6-1 Panthers, who are off to a phenomenal start. Atlanta's favored by 2. After Matt Ryan's outburst, his 4-TD game against Seattle, I'm taking the Falcons and the 2 points. Next game, New England at Buffalo. Again, another divisional matchup. New England coming off the loss to Miami, 30-16. Buffalo's trying to turn their season around. They're 2-4 right now, trying to cut down on interceptions and get back in the win column. Buffalo is taking 2 points here, so New England is the favorite. I am going to take New England, however. It's a really good team. Even though they got the rookie quarterback, it's strong defense. Don't be surprised to see 8 or 9 interceptions in this game between these two. With these defenses and how this game is set up, could be a lot of turnovers in that game. So whoever is able to keep the other team out of the end zone on defense, on offense from a pick six or something like that, might turn out to be the winner. But I'm taking New England -2. We've got Las Vegas Raiders and the LA Chargers, an AFC West matchup. Chargers, again, coming off the big win against the Giants at 4-2. They're 7-point favorites over the Raiders. Raiders are kind of a confusing team to me. LV is a really, really good user, but he struggled this cycle. He beat the crap out of me last season, so I know he's good, but he's had a bit of a rough start to this cycle. B has got his defense and offense rolling. He really put on a clinic last week. I'm taking the Chargers -7 over the Raiders. An AFC North matchup, what used to be is typically a really high-profile matchup. These two teams coming in both at 2-5, trying to pick up the pieces after losses last week. Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is favored by 2. You just never know what to expect. Pittsburgh is really struggling on offense with Weston, their rookie quarterback. Baltimore hasn't quite figured out how to get Lamar Jackson and that offense going. I think I'm going to take Pittsburgh in the 2 points here. Pittsburgh -2 over Baltimore. But I could easily see Lamar Jackson blowing up for 3 or 4 TDs and Baltimore getting a big win. But give me Pittsburgh that game. Next up, we got Washington coming off their big win over Kansas City at 3-3 over the 6-1 Panthers. The Panthers squeaked by narrowly, or almost got up in the biggest upset of the season so far. Squeaked by the 1-5 at the time Minnesota Vikings, who are now 1-6, I believe. Had a big comeback. They were down 23-7 at halftime. Had a big comeback and scored with a couple minutes left to win 27-26. But that Carolina offense is rolling. The defense is much improved from last season. Give me Carolina -6. Next up, we got New Orleans and the Jets. New Orleans coming in at 3-3. The Jets at 2-5, but coming off a big victory. Actually a CPU victory. Austin's had some connection issues, so I know he's hoping to get that figured out. But his CPU beat the Buccaneers last week to get their second win. The Jets are getting 7 points, so it's they're +7. I'm actually going to take the Jets this game, assuming that Austin is able to play. He's really starting to turn around his offense, taking a lot more care of the ball. I think he's got a good shot against New Orleans, so give me the Jets +7. Next up, we got Seattle at 3-4. Tough loss to Atlanta last week. Visiting Chicago at 6-1. The Bears are rolling. They're getting 7 points here, they're given 7 points, so Bears -7. I'm going to take Seattle not to win. I think they're just going to cover. I do think the Bears will win, but I think Seattle covers the 7 points. A pair of bottom feeders of the AFC South, Houston and Indianapolis. We mentioned Drew is having some issues with his connection as well, so he's had 3 straight losses via SIM. Well, 2 losses via SIM, and then Jacksonville beat up on his CPU last week. Houston has one of the top 3 offenses in the league, but they've also got one of the bottom 3 defenses coming in at 2-4. I know they're working to hopefully get a chance to turn their season around and maybe vie for a wild card spot. Indianapolis is getting 3 points, but give me Houston -3 on the road. And then last but not least, we've got 2 games left. Our biggest spread of the week, Minnesota at 1-5 at Green Bay. Again, the undefeated Packers at 6-0. I believe Minnesota might be 1-6, not 1-5, but whatever. Green Bay is getting 15 points here. I don't like to have double-digit spreads in the football league, but you've got a rookie quarterback going against that Green Bay defense. Riley and has got everything dialed in for his team, so I'm going to take Green Bay minus 15. I went against Minnesota. I thought the Panthers would have a big victory over Minnesota, and Sprite had a really, really solid game plan. He didn't get the win, but he showed a lot of improvement taking care of the ball. His rookie quarterback Palmer had 2 touchdowns and no interceptions after throwing 16 interceptions in the first 5 games. So if he can continue that, I think he can make this game close. I don't know that you expect a win out of Minnesota, but certainly could possibly cover that 15. But I think that Green Bay team is a little bit too much, and they're going to cover the 15-point spread. So give me Green Bay minus 15. And then our upset special of the week, we go to Philadelphia. The 49ers on the road at 4-3, traveling to Philadelphia at 2-4. Philadelphia is getting 5 points here. Philadelphia is a playoff team last season. That NFC East is a really tough division. They're off to a rough start. San Francisco had a rough year last year. They're coming off a big win over Detroit last week at 4-3. I don't know why. I just think Philly's going to take the upset here. So give me Philly plus 5. I think Toke has got something up his sleeve, and he's going to start making a run in that NFC East starting this week. So there you have it. I got my picks in. So again, we've got Philly with the upset special, Cleveland over Tennessee, Cleveland plus 6 at Tennessee, Atlanta minus 2. Give me New England minus 2, the Chargers minus 7, Pittsburgh minus 2, Carolina minus 6, the Jets plus 7, Seattle plus 7, Houston minus 3, and then Green Bay minus 15. So I appreciate y'all listening. That's it for our Week 8 podcast. Hopefully we'll be able to get the Week 9 podcast in a few days. I'm on a bye this week, so let's try to get a quick advance, get those games scheduled. Thanks, guys.